Kyler realized his phone was dead right as he got to the front of the line at the hub. He'd spent the afternoon waiting for a class to start by draining his battery on a new mobile game, and of course, he'd forgotten his portable charger. He was already at the counter, so he hastily pulled a 20 from his wallet, telling the barista he wanted their signature iced latte, light on the syrup, regular ice. Thinking about the study group he had later and the necessity of his phone, he asked if they happened to have any charging stations available. The barista pointed him toward a small kiosk with locked charging bays. As his phone began to power up, Kyler scanned the bustling diner for Ethan, but he was nowhere in sight. He glanced toward the parking lot, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He wondered what kind of phone call took this long. The hub was close to the residence halls, so Kyler figured if Ethan didn't show up soon, he could just leave the latte with the RA at the front desk. Suddenly, a pair of headlights cut through the evening gloom from a far corner of the lot. The area directly in front of the diner was crowded with bike racks and a few spots for quick drop-offs, but some cars were using it for longer-term parking. With nothing else to do while his phone charged, Kyler's gaze drifted that way. He saw a familiar figure step out of a sleek, dark sedan. The man closed the door and began walking briskly toward the science quad. Kyler squinted, his eyes adjusting. It was Julian. He called out Julian's name, the sound cutting through the low hum of the diner's patio. Julian stopped, turning his head at the sound of his name. Seeing Kyler standing by the entrance to the hub, he immediately changed direction and walked over. Kyler asked him what he was doing here. Before Julian could answer, Kyler saw the severe look on his face and quickly added a disclaimer, insisting he hadn't been out drinking and that Julian had no reason to tell his older brother, Kevin. Julian's expression remained grim as he asked why Kyler's phone had been off. Kyler's defensiveness faltered. He explained that it had simply run out of battery while he was studying, conveniently omitting the part about the game. He held up the phone, now tethered to the charging station, and mentioned that Ethan's car charger wasn't working and he just plugged it in. He then asked if Julian needed him for something. Julian instructed him to keep his phone on from now on and to stay put, informing him that his brother would be there shortly. Julian's eyes flickered to Kyler's phone, and a fraction of the tension in his shoulders seemed to release when he saw it was charging. Only yesterday, Kevin's personal server had been targeted by an IP tracker. They couldn't predict what the other party's next move would be. The investigation into the controlled supplements only involved Kevin and himself. A digital was one thing, but if their opponents decided on a more aggressive physical approach, the situation could become far more dangerous. They hadn't initially considered Kyler a target, but the tracking incident was a stark wake-up call. Kyler was frequently off campus, making him a vulnerable point of leverage against his brother. Julian felt a profound sense of relief that nothing had happened today. Kyler's face fell. He whined about what his brother could possibly want, insisting he had been on his best behavior lately. Julian stood beside him, his presence a silent, unmovable guard. He told Kyler he needed to go straight back to his dorm afterward and not to go anywhere else. If Kevin was coming, Kyler's plans for the evening were definitely ruined. Julian noticed the order receipt in his hand and asked if he had been with Ethan all afternoon. Kyler confirmed this, immediately launching into a rambling defense of his day. He pleaded with Julian to tell his brother that he had genuinely done nothing wrong. He described how he and Ethan had just gone to the mall downtown to buy a few things and had come straight back to campus. He swore that nothing else had happened, telling Julian he could ask Ethan for confirmation as soon as he got back. He promised he wasn't lying. Julian asked where Ethan was. Kyler explained that Ethan had said he needed to make a call. He had asked Kyler to grab him a latte and said he'd be right over. Kyler added that he was starting to wonder what was taking so long. It had been a while. Hearing this, Julian stiffened. He pulled out his own phone and dialed Ethan's number. It rang without going to voicemail, but Ethan didn't answer. Julian's face darkened instantly. He demanded to know which direction Ethan had gone. Startled by Julian's intensity, Kyler pointed toward the far side of the parking lot. He said that was where Ethan's car was parked, and he was probably still in it. As he started to walk in that direction, Julian's voice stopped him, sharp and commanding. He told Kyler to stay right where he was and not to move. Kyler froze, planting his feet firmly on the pavement. He assured Julian he wouldn't go anywhere. In the narrow service alley, Ethan had struck first, using a discarded length of rebar to drive the two men back. The person who had been shoved into the alley seemed completely unprepared for the sudden intervention, stumbling backward at the sight of the makeshift weapon in Ethan's hands. Just then, two more figures emerged from the shadows, blocking the entrance and trapping Ethan completely. One of the men behind Ethan spoke, his voice rough. He questioned why they were hesitating over one person, suggesting they should just take him out and get back to the real target. Ethan turned his gaze to the speaker, his voice deceptively calm as he asked if they were referring to Kyler. One of them spat back that it was none of his business. The three had no intention of wasting time talking. Their job wasn't to deal with this random bystander. Their client had shown them a photo of a college kid with a buzz cut and given them a strange request: beat him badly enough to put him in the hospital. They had been tailing him since noon, but the kid had spent the entire day wandering through a crowded mall. Finally, they had followed him back to the relative quiet of the campus. It seemed the two had split up, giving them the perfect opportunity to finish the job. They never expected someone to interfere. All three rushed him at once. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He delivered a brutal kick to one man's ribs and swung the rebar in a wide arc, connecting with the man behind him. The confined space of the alley worked to his advantage. The thugs, expecting an easy fight, were caught off guard by the ferocity of their opponent. The slender student fought with a viciousness that belied his appearance, each blow aimed with chilling precision at their most vulnerable points. The initial charge gained them nothing but a collection of fresh bruises. Ethan was agile, his movements fluid and efficient. Even when their punches landed, he seemed to absorb the impact without flinching, retaliating with twice the force as if he felt no pain at all. He fought like a man with nothing to lose. The thugs knew how to throw a punch, but compared to the raw, desperate violence of this kid, they might as well have been amateurs. He stood in the center of the alley, the rebar held loosely in one hand, his jacket hanging open. His gaze swept over them, and he asked again who had sent them after Kyler. The three men exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, his expression twisting into a snarl, pulled a knife from his pocket and lunged at Ethan. The night was dark, with only a few scattered pedestrians near the diner. Julian walked briskly toward the parking lot, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach as he got closer to where Ethan's car was supposed to be. The area was poorly lit. A couple of the overhead lamps were broken, and no one else was around. He saw the solitary black car and quickened his pace. Before he reached it, a noise from a service alley to his right made him stop. He turned. A narrow passage ran between two of the diner's auxiliary buildings, its entrance cluttered with large plastic water barrels. In the faint, indirect light, he could make out the blurred motion of figures locked in a struggle. Julian's expression hardened, and he immediately veered toward the alley. As he got closer, he heard the cold, unforgiving words of a young man, punctuated by the whistle of something cutting through the air. Julian took a few steps inside, his eyes catching the glint of a knife on the grimy pavement. His gaze lifted, focusing on the figure of the young man silhouetted against the dim light. A fist connected with a man's face. Ethan was crouched, hauling another man up from the ground by his shirt. The man he held babbled that he didn't know anything. He claimed someone had offered them $20,000 in cash to do the job, promising to bail them out if they got picked up. Ethan's eyes were cold. He asked if the man was sure he didn't want to talk, suggesting maybe he'd prefer to have his other arm broken. He twisted the man's wrist with a threatening pressure. The man shrieked that he was telling the truth, that they would have talked already if they knew anything. Ethan looked at the three men, now incapacitated in the alley. He slowly lowered his gaze to the back of his own hand. The skin over his knuckles was scraped raw in several places, and a long, shallow cut from the knife oozed blood along his forearm. He had hoped to get some information from them, but it was clear they were just low-level thugs, hired for a quick and dirty job. It made sense. He had noticed them following him and Kyler earlier in the day, but their methods were clumsy. If they were the professionals Richard Sterling usually employed, it seemed odd that they would be targeting Kyler, who hadn't done anything to provoke anyone recently. Perhaps it was just a random act of violence. He told them to take their time and think about it. As he spoke, he noticed the man's eyes darting behind him. Ethan paused. He heard a sound, and his head snapped around. Standing just a few yards away, shrouded in the alley's deep shadows, was Julian. Julian's hair was slightly messy, his intense gaze fixed on him. He said Ethan's name. Ethan's pupils contracted. The hand gripping the thug's collar went slack. He had no idea how long Julian had been standing there, or how much he had seen. The Julian he knew was a quiet academic, a man who spent his days surrounded by laboratory equipment whose names Ethan couldn't even pronounce. In all their interactions, Julian had been the epitome of gentle composure. In his past life, Ethan had always found himself unconsciously softening his own rough edges around him, terrified of revealing the desperate, broken person he used to be. After being reborn, he had never interacted with this younger version of Julian, but he had heard that Julian preferred people who were quiet and well-behaved. He had been carefully curating his own image, hiding his more volatile nature, desperate not to make a bad impression. Even after getting to know him and realizing he was much the same as the man from his memories, the fear remained. In 2 lifetimes, he had never been violent in front of Julian, let alone in a scene like this. Julian's gaze swept over the scene, taking in the men groaning on the ground. He had seen many sides of Ethan, but never this one, the one with all his defenses down, all his sharp edges exposed. A flicker of panic crossed Ethan's face. He cursed silently under his breath and stood up, glancing at the men behind him. He offered a weak, unconvincing explanation, claiming it was all an act. He said there were too many of them, and he would have been the one on the ground if he hadn't put on a tough front. He watched Julian's face, whose eyes had dropped to his injured hand. The lie was flimsy, pathetic. Ethan had never told such a transparent lie in this life. He couldn't believe the words were even coming out of his mouth. There was no way to spin this. He stopped trying. He asked simply if Julian believed him. Julian was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said that he did. Ethan stared, his eyes locking with Julian's. In the dim light, Julian's eyes were like pools of ink. A shout came from outside the alley. "Over here!" The beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness as campus security finally arrived. They had received an anonymous text about a disturbance near the diner and had rushed over from the main gate. Kyler trailed behind them, clutching a latte, his eyes wide. He took in the scene of downed bodies and looked at Ethan with pure admiration. blissfully unaware of the danger he had just been in. He exclaimed how incredible it was that Ethan had taken them all down by himself. Ethan shot him a look, muttering that he could just not speak. He stepped back to give the officer space, his gaze sliding toward Julian. Before his eyes could meet Julian's, a cool hand closed around his own. The large palm gently grasped his uninjured hand, and Ethan was led out of the alley, his eyes fixed on their joined hands. Julian simply said that they should go. Several security officers were now in the alley, their flashlights illuminating the scene. A small crowd of students had gathered nearby. On the ground lay a couple of knives, one of them stained with blood. The three thugs looked nothing like students. The officers recognized the gravity of the situation, swiftly restraining the men while radioing for backup and notifying the university administration. Security at the university was typically lax, but an attack on a student by outsiders was a major incident. Julian led Ethan away from the dark alley and into the light. Once they were clear, Julian lifted Ethan's hand, his brow furrowing as he examined the broken skin over his knuckles. He then looked at Ethan's other hand and commanded him to show it. Ethan met Julian's gaze and obediently brought his other hand out from behind his back. He started to say it wasn't as bad as it looked. They were standing just outside the diner, bathed in the warm light spilling from its windows. Julian saw that the cuts on his right hand were worse. His eyes darkened. He gently pushed up the sleeve of Ethan's jacket, revealing several shallow gashes on his forearm where the knife had grazed him. Some were still bleeding. Ethan watched Julian, a strange feeling of guilt washing over him. He had known this was coming. He had sent Kyler away and texted security before confronting the men. He had wanted to question them alone, knowing it would be impossible once authorities arrived. He had been confident he could handle 3 of them. In his past life, Richard Sterling had sent far worse to ambush him after work. He had learned to fight in his youth, but the real ruthlessness had been honed by years of survival. He thought to himself that if he had just been a little more careful, he wouldn't have gotten cut at all. Julian's voice was cold as he stated that the wounds needed to be treated at the health center. Just then, a car screeched to a halt nearby. Kevin jumped out, running toward them. He asked if they were okay, breathing heavily. His eyes met Julian's in a shared, knowing glance before flicking over to Kyler, who was still standing in the crowd, sipping his latte, completely oblivious to the fact that he had been the target of the attack. Kevin muttered a curse under his breath about his idiot brother. His gaze fell on Ethan's injuries, and understanding dawned on his face. He told Julian to take Ethan to get his wounds looked at, saying he would handle things here. Ethan frowned. Julian's sudden appearance was strange enough, but now Kevin was here too? Remembering that the men had been after Kyler, he told Kevin what he had learned, that someone had paid them $20,000 to put Kyler in the hospital. Kevin's expression hardened for a second. He said that it confirmed their fears. The attack was meant for them. Ethan considered this. Was someone seeking revenge against the family? Kevin took charge of the scene, speaking with campus security before grabbing Kyler and shoving him into his car. Ethan went with Julian to the health center. The wounds looked worse than they were. As a nurse cleaned and dressed them, Julian stood silently beside him, a steadying hand on his back. The process took some time, with Julian asking the nurse about care instructions while Ethan remained quiet. By the time they left, it was after 10 o'clock. Looking at Julian, Ethan hesitated for a moment before saying he wouldn't do it again. Julian looked back at him. He told Ethan that if he ever found himself in a situation like that again, he should call the police instead of trying to be a hero. He reminded him that the men had knives, and that he was lucky nothing worse had happened. The alley was secluded, poorly lit. Julian had only found him because he'd heard the noise. If Ethan had been seriously injured and Julian hadn't arrived in time, the outcome would have been terrifyingly different. There were too many variables, too many what-ifs. Ethan countered that he would have run if he couldn't win, and that they were on a populated campus. Julian was momentarily speechless. He had no right to lecture Ethan, but the thought of what could have happened was infuriating. Ethan quickly conceded, admitting he was wrong and promising it wouldn't happen again. Julian looked at the young man, his head slightly bowed, and the sharp reprimand he had been about to deliver died on his lips. They stood in silence outside the health center doors as other students came and went. Ethan thought the entire evening had been a disaster. Julian had seen him at his worst, and he hadn't even gotten any useful information from the attackers. He could tell Julian was angry. In all the time he had known him, Julian had always been modest and gentle. But when a person like that got angry, it wasn't with shouting or overt displays. It was in the subtle shift in the tone of his voice. Being caught fighting was bad enough. He didn't want to make an even worse impression. He was about to try and explain again when he felt a weight on his head. Julian's hand was gently ruffling his hair. He said softly that there wouldn't be a next time. Ethan paused, then asked if he was angry. Julian admitted that he was, but that he had no right to be. Ethan looked down. "You," he began, but was cut off by Julian's phone ringing. It was Kevin. Julian, not hearing what Ethan had been about to say, turned and walked a few steps away to take the call. Ethan thought to himself that Julian had every right. Julian learned that the situation was confirmed. The attackers were just local thugs with prior records who had been hired to teach Kyler a lesson. They had provided a burner phone number, which was being traced, but Kyler insisted he had no conflicts with anyone. Kyler, who was now with his brother, anxiously asked if Ethan was okay, whining that he didn't even know those guys. Kevin told him Ethan was fine and ordered him to stay inside and lay low for a while. Kevin sounded weary as he explained to Julian that they likely wouldn't get any more information from the thugs. He knew his brother's personality. It was highly unlikely Kyler had provoked anyone. The attack was almost certainly directed at him. It was clear using his family as a target. Most of their family's business was overseas. In the US, Kyler was the only person Kevin truly cared about. Their opponents were leveraging Kyler's safety to threaten him. Julian's voice was cool as he told Kevin to stop his investigation once this was resolved, stating that it was too dangerous for him to be involved. He felt responsible. He had been the one to ask Kevin for help. He didn't want to see Kevin's family dragged into this mess. He noted that the fact they hadn't taken more extreme measures meant it was and they likely wouldn't try anything else in the short term, having achieved their desired effect. Kevin was silent for a moment before saying they could discuss that later. He asked Julian to thank Ethan for him, acknowledging that if it weren't for him, Kyler would have been in serious trouble. After ending the call, Julian relayed Kevin's thanks to Ethan. Ethan's attention, however, was focused on the fragments of the conversation he had overheard. He asked if something was wrong with Kevin's family. Julian thought of Ethan's reckless actions in the alley. He had jumped into a dangerous situation just because Kyler was being followed. If he knew that Kyler was in danger because of Kevin's investigation into the wellness supplements, he would undoubtedly blame himself. Ethan needed to know the truth, but not yet. Julian explained that someone was targeting Kevin, and this was likely Ethan was still puzzled. He felt like Julian was leaving something out. Julian then asked if he remembered the information about the controlled substances in the supplements he had sent him. Ethan's gaze sharpened as he confirmed that he did, asking if there were new leads. Julian confirmed there were. He explained that it wasn't just a matter of illegal importation. It was possible someone was using specialized equipment to extract and manufacture related chemical compounds. He told Ethan what they currently knew, that these labs were not only active in their city but also had business ties to New York. The identity of the New York party was unknown, but there was a suspicious local entity. Ethan asked who it was. Sterling Medical, Julian said. He was telling Ethan this so that his family could be on their guard. Whether Sterling Medical was definitively involved was still unconfirmed, but caution was necessary. Hearing this, a series of connections clicked into place in Ethan's mind. He asked for confirmation that there were business ties to New York. Julian affirmed this, but added that they didn't know which financial power was behind the New York operations yet. He said he would speak to Ethan's older brother about it and that they would adjust their investigation accordingly. He kept the details brief. The situation was too dangerous to involve Ethan further. They had already alerted their opponents, so a direct investigation was out of the question. They also needed to find a way to extricate Kevin's family from the situation. But for Ethan, the few clues Julian had provided were enough to form a clear picture. The harmful compounds in the supplements were being extracted by labs in their city, labs that had a connection to the Sterling family and business dealings in New York. The number of financial players in New York was vast, but Ethan had only one suspect in mind, Victor Croft. He hadn't been sure of the connection between Sterling and Croft before, but if there was an underlying business relationship, there had to be a shared interest. That business was undoubtedly illicit, likely tied to Richard Sterling's many illegal activities. A new plan began to form in Ethan's mind. Julian asked him what he was thinking. Ethan instinctively replied, "Nothing." Julian's gaze lingered on him, then dropped to his bandaged hand, a shadow of concern in his eyes. He thought to himself that Ethan probably didn't realize how transparent his small gestures were. Ethan, jolted back to the present, remembered what he had been about to say earlier. His eyes met Julian's. He opened his mouth to speak, but his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. In the relative quiet of their position, the sound was unmistakable. A slow smile spread across Julian's face. He asked if he was hungry. Ethan hadn't eaten much during his outing with Kyler. He had been too focused on the men following them. He wasn't actually that hungry. He started to deny it, but just then Julian's phone rang again. It was Mike, his colleague from the lab. They had finished work around 8 and had all gone to a restaurant Mike had been wanting to try. He was calling to see if Julian was done with his business and wanted to join them for a late dinner. Julian had rushed over from the lab, and with everything that had happened, he still hadn't eaten. He told Mike they were at that new burger joint near campus, the Gridiron Grill. He said he was still busy and told them to go ahead and eat without him. Ethan watched Julian. He remembered Julian mentioning that he would be busy for the next couple of nights. Usually, that meant he was working late at the lab and would grab a late meal with Mike and the others afterward. Did that mean Julian hadn't eaten yet? An idea sparked in his mind. He said, his voice clear, "I'm hungry." Julian's eyes met Ethan's. He paused, then spoke into the phone again, changing his answer. He asked where they were and told Mike to send him the address. The restaurant was a popular new spot just off campus, always packed until the early hours of the morning. When Ethan and Julian arrived, they saw Julian's 4 colleagues crammed around a large table. Mike waved them over enthusiastically. The place was full, but a server managed to squeeze in an extra chair. Amid the noise and chatter, Ethan sat down next to Julian. The chairs were close, their arms brushing whenever they moved. Mike and the others were surprised to see Ethan's bandaged hand and listened with concern as they heard about the fight. Mike commented that the university really needed to tighten its security, as the number of non-students on campus lately was becoming a threat to student safety. Another colleague agreed, mentioning that the university had supposedly started checking IDs at the gates more strictly after an incident with a stalker from another school last month. He wondered how these guys had managed to get in. Ethan's brow furrowed at the mention of a stalker. Julian remained silent. One of them explained that someone had been caught and reported just last month. Ethan realized that was why he had noticed fewer prying eyes on campus recently. The people following him had mostly been near his family's company or when he was off campus. The university must have increased security. His own car was registered with the university, so the men must have followed him in. Either security had been lax, or they also had a vehicle registered with the university. But since Kevin was involved now, he was sure the answer would be found quickly. Mike offered to order more food and asked Ethan what he wanted. Ethan said anything was fine. Julian interjected, reminding them that Ethan's hand was injured and he shouldn't eat anything too greasy or salty. Ethan nodded. Just then, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He excused himself to go to the restroom. The restroom was nearby, and the closed door muffled the restaurant's lively noise. He answered the call. It was the investigator he had hired, who informed him that he had sent some new files to his secure email. Thinking about what Julian had just told him, Ethan asked if there had been any recent movements from Shane Croft. The investigator replied that Shane was still in town. His men had been tailing him for days but had found nothing unusual. He said it seemed like Shane was genuinely on vacation, either attending parties with friends or visiting local tourist spots. He was extremely cautious, and they hadn't found any irregularities yet. This level of caution was all too familiar to Ethan. Just as he was pretending to be a reckless spendthrift, Shane Croft was carefully playing a role. But such performances were never flawless. One small slip, one moment of carelessness, and the entire facade could crumble. The business between the Croft and Sterling families was deeply hidden. Shane was being careful, and his father, Victor, hadn't even shown his face in their city. Since Richard Sterling was already planning his move against Ethan's family company, the Crofts must be making their own moves as well. Ethan told his investigator that Victor's brother, Vincent, would likely be making a move soon. The investigator on the other end of the line chuckled, remarking that his boss seemed to be very well informed. He confirmed that he had recently received word of some activity from Vincent, likely aimed at securing certain family assets held in a private bank in New York. The rivalry between him and Victor was intense, and action was expected soon. Ethan asked if he was very familiar with the Croft family. The investigator replied that it was within his area of expertise. Ethan didn't press further. Instead, he instructed the man to send a specific file to Vincent Croft, saying he would email it to him shortly. The investigator cheerfully agreed. After giving a few more instructions, Ethan hung up. He looked at a file on his phone, a cold smile playing on his lips. His family had already chosen to side with Vincent Croft. It was only right that he help him. Not only help him, but add fuel to the fire of the Croft family's internal war. Returning to the boisterous restaurant, his gaze fell on the laughing group at the table. Mike was urging the server to bring their food faster. Seeing Ethan return, he mentioned that Julian had ordered him a rice bowl. Ethan sat down beside Julian and asked what they were talking about. Mike said they were just discussing university matters. Then, as if remembering something, he turned to Julian and asked why he hadn't invited his goddess out. He added that he had thought Julian was rushing out earlier for a date. Julian froze. Ethan, who had been lost in thought, looked up at Mike, questioning the word goddess. Mike explained to Ethan that his friend Julian was pursuing someone at their university. He nudged Julian with his elbow, teasingly saying it was either a classmate or a senior, but Julian was being secretive about it. He mentioned that a while back, Julian had been going out every night, and they all assumed he was on a string of dates. A while back. Ethan's gaze shifted downward, subtly glancing at Julian beside him. Julian stated flatly that there was no goddess. Mike asked why he was being so secretive. At that moment, a server arrived with their food, and the topic was dropped. Julian cleaned a set of utensils for Ethan and placed them in front of him, a few drops of water splashing onto the table. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Ethan was distracted, his eyes fixed on a single drop of water clinging to the rim of his bowl. He knew exactly who Julian had been sneaking out to meet during that time. Julian asked him if he wasn't hungry. Ethan murmured that he was. In truth, he had no appetite. He had only come to keep Julian company. The conversation had turned to lab-related matters, the group throwing around chemical terms that Ethan didn't understand. Julian occasionally chimed in. Ethan had no interest in their discussion. He lowered his head slightly, his eyes falling on Julian's hand resting on his lap. Mike was saying that their last experimental protocol still had some issues, and that he and Julian had been discussing whether to increase the sample mass. Julian was about to respond when he suddenly stopped. He felt the light brush of gauze against the back of his hand. Cool fingertips traced over his knuckles, then slipped between his fingers. The person's nails weren't sharp, but the sensation of them dragging across his skin was more real, more lasting than any previous touch. It sent a jolt up his arm, a simple yet electrifying caress. Julian's throat tightened. Mike prompted him. Julian's voice was slightly hoarse when he replied that they could increase the mass, but they would have to adjust the control variables. His eyes were half-lidded, his attention fixed on the hand that was causing the delightful disturbance. Ethan's fingertips were pressed against the back of Julian's hand. This was different from their previous accidental touches. For the first time, he was deliberately exploring the raised bones, feeling the structure of Julian's hand beneath the thin layer of skin. And Julian wasn't pulling away. He was allowing it. This silent permission only fueled Ethan's boldness. His fingers glided over the back of Julian's hand, paused between his knuckles, and finally hooked around one of Julian's fingers. Suddenly, the still hand moved. Julian's fingers intertwined with Ethan's, reversing their roles. His hand covered Ethan's, his touch light and careful, avoiding the bandaged areas. He mirrored Ethan's earlier exploration, his own fingers pressing against Ethan's knuckles. But his touch was lighter, the barely there sensation amplified in the noisy restaurant. Amid the cheerful chaos, Ethan thought he heard Julian's voice, a low murmur meant only for him. Julian said he wasn't behaving. Ethan's heart began to race. At the table, the others were still engrossed in their conversation, completely oblivious. The whispered words were barely audible, yet they felt as loud as a drumbeat to Ethan. He replied directly, his own voice a low whisper, "I just wanted to touch you." Julian's eyes remained downcast, his large hand gently enveloping Ethan's. It was like holding a lover's hand, tenderly, carefully. Finally, his pinky finger traced a line across Ethan's palm, a deliberate echo of a boundary crossed once before, confirming a silent, shared secret. Ethan turned his head slightly, his eyes tracing the line of Julian's profile. Julian wasn't looking at him. His gaze was fixed on their joined hands. "Okay," Julian murmured. "You can." They stayed at the restaurant for a while longer. Mike and the others had to get back to the research institute before the dorms locked for the night, so they began to wrap things up. Ethan stood by, the hand Julian had been holding still feeling warm. a tingling sensation that made it hard to tell if it was his healing wounds or something else entirely. His eyes remained on Julian. Mike asked if Julian was coming back with them. Julian glanced at Ethan beside him and told them to go on ahead. Once they were gone, Julian asked if he could walk him back. Ethan nodded. It was a fair distance from the restaurant to the residence hall. They walked side by side, much like they had on several other occasions. But when they reached a fork in the path, they unconsciously chose the longer route. Neither of them mentioned the hands that had been linked under the table, nor the secret that now lay unspoken between them. Everything seemed normal, yet fundamentally different. As they walked, their hands kept brushing against each other. Julian suddenly asked why he had stopped. Ethan paused, then reached for Julian's hand. He missed, his fingers catching the sleeve of Julian's jacket instead. He hesitated, about to try again, when Julian's hand moved up from below, catching his firmly. Cool fingers slid between his own, an intimate, secure grip. Ethan flexed his fingers, his own wrapping around Julian's knuckles. It was different from just touching. This was a mutual hold, palm against palm. Their hands locked together. Ethan had never been in a relationship, had never given a second thought to couples holding hands. But now, the simple act of Julian's fingers laced with his sent his heart into a frantic rhythm. The long walk suddenly felt too short. Before he knew it, they were standing in front of his residence hall. Julian loosened his grip, his hand sliding down to hold just 3 of Ethan's fingers. The feeling of being held so tightly vanished, and Ethan came back to himself. He glanced at Julian. Just as their hands were about to separate, his pinky finger deliberately hooked the inside of Julian's palm. A low chuckle sounded beside him. Ethan turned his head and saw that Julian was watching him, a smile in his eyes. Their hands finally separated. Ethan looked at him and said he was done touching. For now. Julian's gaze moved from Ethan's eyes downward. He reached up and gently smoothed Ethan's hair, which had been messed up by the wind. As his hand passed his ear, his fingers brushed against the sensitive skin. He told Ethan he had to go out of town the next day and would probably be gone for a few days, so their Wednesday dinner would have to be postponed. Ethan flinched slightly at the touch, his ear turning red. He asked where he was going. Julian's eyes lingered on Ethan's reddening ear. He explained that he had some school-related business to take care of back home. The RA shouted from the doorway that she was about to lock up. "Good night," Ethan said. "Good night." After Ethan's figure disappeared inside, Julian took out his phone. He had several unread messages, from Kevin and from friends in New York. Kevin had already dealt with the 3 thugs, even hiring 2 bodyguards to watch Kyler around the clock to ensure his safety. With the increased security presence on campus, Kyler would be safer there. The other messages were related to the investigation Julian was conducting in New York. His network in the city was limited, but he had extensive connections from his years of living and studying there. The information Kevin had gathered was fragmented, but it wasn't impossible to trace the money. He had been coordinating with his contacts in New York to piece everything together. In a way, Kevin had shielded him from the main players, who likely weren't even aware of his involvement yet. This gave him a crucial window of opportunity. He had already found a few leads. Now he needed to go to New York to confirm them in person. He sent a message to Kevin, who called him back almost immediately. Kevin questioned his decision to go to New York at such a critical time. Julian explained that his investigation here had hit a wall, and a trip to New York was necessary to confirm some details. He unlocked his car, assuring Kevin he wouldn't be gone long, maybe a month. Kevin argued that this was exactly the wrong time to dig deeper. but Julian countered that it was precisely because of the timing that he had to go. The other party's attention was currently on Kevin, which made it easier for him to operate covertly. If they did eventually notice him, it would divert some of the pressure from Kevin's family. Kevin was still not convinced, worried for his friend's safety despite his trust in his abilities. Julian reassured him, adding that he would share their current findings with Ethan's older brother so that his family could prepare if Sterling Medical was truly involved. He would also need to inform his own aunt. If this conspiracy ran as deep as he suspected, they all needed to be prepared. Kevin asked when he was leaving. "Tomorrow morning," Julian replied. Julian left for New York the next morning, having taken a 2-week leave from the research institute. Ethan found out when Julian sent him a message after his flight had landed. Though they had just seen each other last night, Ethan already found himself counting the days until he would see him again, his distraction causing him to drift off during his lectures. Kyler, under strict orders from his brother, was confined to campus, his life reduced to a monotonous cycle between the lecture halls and his dorm. He spent most of his free time lounging in Ethan's room playing video games. After only 3 days, he was bored out of his mind, the games no longer holding his interest. Ethan ignored him, using Kyler's presence as an excuse to turn down social invitations while he focused on what Julian had told him. The Croft Corporation was a massive entity with numerous subsidiaries. On the surface, there were no business ties with any of the suspicious labs. However, by cross-referencing financial records, Ethan found that several of these labs had received significant funding from Croft-owned shell companies over the past few years, all disguised as payments for medical products. The books were technically clean, unlike Richard Sterling's, which were a mess of illicit transactions. Investigating the Crofts was difficult, but investigating Richard Sterling was child's play for Ethan, especially with the evidence he already possessed. It didn't take long for him to connect Sterling's dirty money to several of the labs Julian had mentioned. Coincidentally, some of these were the same labs established on properties his uncle had been forced to sell off. Furthermore, his brother had uncovered a small portion of Sterling's hidden assets by tracing illicit activities Sterling had conducted using their family company's resources. It was a thread that connected his own family to Richard Sterling, and now indirectly to Victor Croft. The reason Sterling was so desperate to bankrupt their company became clear. He needed to destroy the evidence of his crimes, which were deeply entangled with their corporate records. Ethan felt that all the pieces were coming together, but he still lacked the final, concrete proof. If he could fully unravel this conspiracy, he could not only ensure that Richard Sterling spent the rest of his life in prison but also use the fallout to damage Victor Croft, weakening his position and aiding his brother Vincent in their family power struggle. It was a perfect, interconnected strategy. He continued to sift through the data he had collected, searching for any missed clues. An email notification popped up in his secure inbox. It was the latest report on Shane Croft's activities. As he scrolled through the photos, one in particular made him freeze. It was a car, nearly identical to the one in the photo their old family driver had provided as evidence. His heart pounded. He immediately called his investigator. He demanded to know whose car was in the photo on page 14 of the third document. The investigator paused, then quickly located the photo and, after a brief consultation with his team, reported that the car belonged not to Shane Croft, but to a local friend of his. This friend was acting as Shane's unofficial tour guide, and the two had been seen together frequently. A friend? A tour guide? Ethan's voice was low and dangerous. He questioned whether the man was just a friend or a chauffeur. The vehicle's similarity to the one in his driver's photo couldn't be a coincidence. It meant the photo was likely indirect evidence linking Richard Sterling to Shane Croft. It was even possible that the man his driver had described as a madman was Shane himself. But Shane was so cautious. How could he have let the driver see him? Or were there other details he was missing? And what did any of this have to do with the supplements? Ethan found the original photo from the driver, cropped the image of the man standing by the car, and sent it to his investigator. He instructed him to check if anyone around Shane Croft matched the profile. The investigator acknowledged the request, then added that he expected major developments within the Croft family in the coming days. Ethan asked if the email he had requested to be sent had gone out. The investigator confirmed that it had been sent to Vincent Croft's inbox on a timer, just as instructed. Ethan hung up. The investigator sighed, remarking to his subordinate that the boss was certainly a man of few words. The subordinate noted that it was rare to see his boss so eager to chat with a client. The investigator glanced at the mountain of files around him. He admitted his curiosity about his mysterious, high-paying client, whose identity was so well protected. But, he concluded, their job was to protect their client's privacy, not to ask questions. Then he pointed to the screen and told his subordinate to get to work finding the man in the photo. In a brightly lit study in New York, Vincent Croft was meeting with his top aides. The news that the antique necklace recovered from Ethan's family was indeed the long-lost family heirloom had been strategically leaked. Certain elders in the family held the necklace in high regard, and its recovery, along with the assets tied to it, would grant him their support in his ongoing battle with his brother, Victor. It was an unexpected gift, a powerful bargaining chip. One of his aides suggested that with the matter of the necklace settled, Victor would surely retaliate. He advised a preemptive strike. Vincent agreed. The last thing he needed was for a desperate Victor to start leaking damaging information. Just as he was finalizing his plans, he received an anonymous email. It contained a dossier on Victor, presented as a series of oral accounts without any hard evidence. The sender seemed to have intimate knowledge of Victor's operations and the family's internal politics, even hinting at some of Victor's hidden strategies. At first, he was skeptical, but as he read on, he found that several of the claims aligned with his own intelligence, lending the document a startling air of authenticity. He called a halt to their original plan, telling his team that they were going to do something else first. In a tea room filled with the scent of incense, a young man in casual clothes poured steaming tea into a delicate cup. When Richard Sterling entered, he dismissed his assistant with a glance, leaving him alone with the young man. Sterling sat down and asked bluntly if he was responsible for the incident with the family in their city. The young man, Shane Croft, pushed a cup of tea toward him. He said it wasn't much, just a lesson for Kevin to mind his own business. He added calmly that Kyler had been lucky. He had intended to break his leg. Sterling looked at the man before him, a man he knew to be utterly ruthless. This was just He had no doubt that if Kevin had found anything substantial, Shane would have targeted him directly. From the beginning of their partnership, Sterling had been aware of the dangerous power Shane wielded. A seemingly unremarkable illegitimate son. He had been pulling strings from the shadows for years, his patience matched only by his cruelty. Shane asked if he knew how Kevin had traced the operation back to him. He explained that Kevin had found one of the Sterling-affiliated labs and followed the trail. He told Sterling his work had been sloppy and that the fire was now spreading to his side of the operation. Sterling protested that it was impossible. The labs were hidden under shell corporations and couldn't be traced to him. Shane cut him off, stating that regardless of whose fault it was, the situation had to be contained. Just then, he tossed a file onto the table. He asked Sterling to explain how Vincent had gotten his hands on the necklace. Sterling's face went pale as he read the report. Shane's voice was ice as he demanded to know why the matter of the necklace hadn't been handled properly. Sterling had promised to secure it, but had let it slip through his fingers at the auction, allowing Ethan to acquire it. Now, it was in Vincent's hands, and the entire game had changed. The assets and influence tied to that necklace were far greater than they had anticipated, and the advantage they once held was gone. As Sterling stammered out excuses, Shane lost interest. Sterling said he was nearly finished dealing with another loose end and that his plan was ready. Shane asked when. Sterling replied early next month. Shane's voice was flat as he said that was too long. He wanted it done by the middle of this month. Sterling's face tightened, but he agreed. After Sterling left, Shane sat alone, deeply disappointed. He had thought Sterling was a useful, manageable partner, but recent events had proven him to be a liability. He was too cautious, too hesitant. Shane had long suspected Ethan, even having him followed, but had found nothing. The idea that a college student could be orchestrating all this seemed impossible. The kid's past was too well documented, his persona too convincing. Unless he was a prodigy of deception, it just didn't add up. Just then, an associate entered the room, his face pale. He informed Shane that there was trouble in New York. The company's internal server had been breached that morning. Someone had posted an announcement. He hesitated, then said that the announcement was about his relationship with Victor. The story about him being Victor's illegitimate son was now known throughout the entire company. The teacup in Shane's hand shattered, its sharp edges cutting into his palm. His face became a mask of cold fury. In the normally quiet office spaces of the Croft Corporation headquarters in New York, employees were gathered in small groups, whispering. The announcement had been deleted within 10 minutes, but the damage was done. Victor Croft's secret was out. The family was notoriously traditional, and the news sent shockwaves through its upper echelons. Anyone with any sense knew it wasn't a random hack. It was an inside job, a declaration of war. In the boardroom, the tension between the two brothers, Victor and Vincent, was thick enough to cut with a knife. For the first time in a long time, the ever-smiling Victor looked grim. Vincent, on the other hand, appeared calm and composed as he coolly proceeded with the meeting agenda. After the meeting, Victor furiously demanded to know how Vincent had obtained the DNA report. His assistant reported that the doctor who had performed the test had vanished, likely under Vincent's protection. The situation was dire. With the revelation of his illegitimate son, Victor's standing with the family elders was severely compromised. He ordered his staff to suppress the story, to keep any word of it from reaching the old patriarch. Meanwhile, a young man in a black coat and mask stood outside a closed bar. The owner, a large man dozing at the counter, looked up and pulled an envelope from under the bar. He told the young man he had heard he was back from his university town and had put his people on the case right away. He confirmed that of the corporations they had investigated, one was a match, the Croft family. To be precise, it was Victor Croft. He had purchased a large plot of land near several of the labs, and while it was currently undeveloped, there were reports of heavy vehicle traffic in the area. Julian took the envelope and tore it open. He quickly scanned the contents. The owner warned him that Victor Croft was a dangerous man and advised him to be careful. Julian assured him he knew what he was doing. He said he had what he needed and would be flying back the next day to confirm the situation with Sterling Medical. Once he had proof of their joint illegal enterprise, he would decide on the next steps. After leaving the bar, he sent a text message to Ethan's brother. He had already briefed him on the situation before leaving for New York, him to be wary of Sterling. If the illegal supply chain was confirmed, he would have to turn over all evidence to their family. The rumors within the Croft Corporation were suppressed, but the damage was done. Shane listened to the whispers and veiled insults for days. his initial rage hardening into a cold resolve. An assistant confirmed his suspicions. The server breach showed signs of an external attack, but the firewall had not been compromised. It was an inside job, tacitly approved by Vincent. The assistant then reported something strange they had discovered while investigating Kevin. He had a close relationship with Julian, who had been present at the time of the attack on Kyler. And Julian was the son of a family with long-standing ties to Ethan's family. Furthermore, Julian's aunt was a close friend of Vincent Croft's wife. It was likely that the connection between Vincent and Ethan's family had been facilitated by Julian's family. The assistant added that the day after the attack, Julian had flown to New York, staying for nearly 10 days on the pretext of handling university paperwork, and that his family was hosting a birthday party for him in 2 days. A birthday party? Shane's eyes narrowed. He ordered his assistant to investigate Julian thoroughly. The day before Julian's birthday, Ethan went home. He checked the tea and coffee in the kitchen cabinet, then asked the butler about his parents' medication schedule. Satisfied with the answer, he left the kitchen. The butler quietly instructed a maid not to let Ethan open the second cabinet next time, explaining that it contained his father's and brother's private collection of expensive teas and coffees, and he was afraid Ethan might just throw them all out. Ethan sat with his mother in the living room watching television. She commented on the bad acting of one of the stars, and Ethan agreed, calling him just a pretty face. She then started gossiping about the Croft family, mentioning that his father had been in business talks with them and that Victor had an illegitimate son, which was causing a huge scandal. She reminded him not to forget to get a gift for Julian's birthday, as Julian had been a great help to their family. Ethan assured her he had already taken care of it. Later that evening, his brother called him into his study. He told Ethan that Julian had brought him a message from New York. Julian had apparently been investigating several labs on the outskirts of the city, and suspected that Victor Croft and Sterling Medical were involved in the illegal trafficking of drugs or food products, though he lacked concrete evidence. Ethan's expression changed. When did this happen? Julian hadn't mentioned any of this. His brother explained that Julian had been looking into it for a while, using his own network of contacts. He had only shared the information recently, promising to provide evidence of the business dealings between Sterling and Croft soon. With that evidence, they would have more than enough to bring Richard Sterling down. Ethan barely heard the last part. His mind was racing. Illegal drugs and food products. The secret dealings between Sterling and Croft. It all connected to his past life, to the reasons why Victor Croft had protected Sterling. And Shane was likely the middleman. He asked his brother if Julian knew how dangerous this was. His brother replied that Sterling and Croft didn't seem to be aware of his investigation yet, which was why he had been able to proceed so smoothly. Ethan abruptly stood up and left the study. Back in his own darkened room, he pulled out his phone, his hand trembling. He opened his chat with Julian, their last conversation from that morning. He wanted to say so many things, but the words wouldn't come. Julian never spoke of things he couldn't prove. The fact that he was sharing this information now meant he was close, dangerously close, to the truth. He knew how risky it was to investigate men like Sterling and Croft. How could Julian be so reckless? His phone rang. He saw Julian's name on the screen and answered. Julian's voice, warm and familiar, asked why he was calling so late. Ethan's room was dark, a pile of cigarette butts growing in the ashtray beside him. Hearing Julian's voice, a wave of calm washed over him, lodging a lump in his throat. He said he just wanted to hear his voice before he went to sleep. His own voice was hoarse, and Julian immediately asked if he was coming down with a cold. Ethan denied it. They talked for a while, the conversation easy and natural. Ethan found himself thinking that he cared for Julian more than he had ever realized. He had an overwhelming urge to see him right then and there. As the clock ticked past midnight, Ethan said quietly, "Happy birthday, Julian." There was a pause on the other end, then a soft laugh. Julian asked if he had stayed up just to wish him a happy birthday. Ethan's eyes were downcast. He said yes and thank you. He told him to get some rest, as it was now officially his birthday. After another moment of silence, Julian asked, "See you tonight?" "See you tonight," Ethan replied. He hung up and stared at Julian's name on the screen for a long time. It had been years since he had said those words, not since before Julian had died in his past life. The birthday party was held in the ballroom of a luxury hotel downtown. The parking lot was a sea of high-end cars. Ethan sat in the back of his family's car, listening to his father and brother discuss the guest list, which included the Sterling family. In the high-stakes social arena of their city, appearances had to be maintained. As they pulled up to the grand entrance, a valet opened their doors. While his father and brother were signing the guest register, Ethan's gaze was drawn to a black sedan parked across the Fountain Plaza. He stepped back for a better look. His blood ran cold. He recognized the license plate. It was the same car he had seen in the photos of Shane Croft. Shane was here. He asked a nearby attendant how many floors the event occupied. The attendant informed him that the 6th, 7th, and 8th floors had been reserved. The ballroom was on the 6th, with rooms for guests on the floors above. Ethan thanked him and followed his family inside. The ballroom was opulent, filled with the city's elite. Ethan's eyes scanned the room, quickly spotting Richard Sterling and his son, Ryan, schmoozing with other guests. He looked away, his gaze finding Julian, who was engaged in a conversation across the room. Ethan didn't approach. Instead, he sent a quick text message. A moment later, Julian excused himself and walked over. He was dressed in a tailored black suit, his hair styled back, his silver-framed glasses giving him a mature, sophisticated look that reminded Ethan of the man he had known years in the future. Julian asked who he was texting. Ethan replied that it was just his assistant, Joe, about a small matter. He wished him a happy birthday. Before they could say more, an attendant approached and whispered something in Julian's ear. Julian paused, then asked if it was about what they had just discussed. The attendant nodded. Ethan told him to go ahead if he was busy. Julian took a glass of orange juice from a passing tray and handed it to Ethan, saying he might be too busy to spend much time with him. Ethan took the glass, his eyes on the champagne flute in Julian's hand. He said it was fine. He watched as Julian followed the attendant to a service door at the back of the ballroom. The attendant handed him a gift box. His brother came over and asked what he was looking at. Ethan said it was nothing. He asked if the staff were all from the hotel. His brother explained that some were, but the servers in the main ballroom had been personally vetted and hired by Julian's aunt. At the service door, Julian took the gift box. The attendant explained that a man in a hat had dropped it off, refusing to give a clear name and using registration information that matched another guest. Julian's eyes narrowed. The box was exquisitely wrapped but unnervingly light. He untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a small, plush teddy bear. As he picked it up, its head fell off. The head and body had been severed. He placed it back in the box, closed the lid, and instructed the attendant to have the hotel manager check the security footage discreetly. On the 16th floor, Shane Croft stood by a window, looking out at the city lights. A middle-aged man entered, reporting that the gift had been delivered. Shane swirled the red wine in his glass. His investigation into Julian's trip to New York had revealed several days where he had not left his hotel room at all. Combined with his family's role in the necklace affair, Shane had lost all patience. He hadn't had time to plan anything elaborate, but a small surprise to ruin the evening and embarrass the family was well within his power. The man confirmed that his operative was also in place. Shane cautioned him to be careful. Back in the ballroom, the birthday cake was rolled out. Ethan watched the proceedings, his attention divided. Soon, Kyler and Kevin arrived, complaining about the traffic. Kyler joined Ethan, asking him why he was drinking orange juice. Ethan replied that he was just trying something different. While they talked, Ethan's eyes kept scanning the servers. Since his brother had told him they were all pre-approved, any new face would stand out. His phone buzzed. He handed his orange juice to Kyler and told him to keep an eye on Julian and to call him if he left the room. Kyler, now holding 2 glasses of orange juice, looked bewildered. Ethan said he was just going to the restroom and walked away, answering his phone. His assistant, Joe, was panting on the other end. He was standing outside the hotel, confirming that the black car was still there. He read the license plate number aloud. It was a match. Shane Croft was in the hotel. Ethan instructed Joe to go to the front desk and book a room. When Ethan returned to the ballroom, Kyler was still standing there, looking confused. He was about to hand Ethan his drink back when he noticed Ethan staring intently at a server who had just entered from the main doors. Kyler asked what was wrong. Ethan pointed out the new face, explaining that since all the servers were supposed to be pre-approved, this man was an anomaly, and he was carrying only a single glass of champagne. Ethan put down his juice, took a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray, and told Kyler to wait for him. The new server moved through the crowd, his eyes fixed on Julian. As he neared him, someone bumped into him hard. The champagne sloshed, but he managed to keep the glass from falling. "Watch where you're going," a young man snapped. It was Ethan, pointing to the champagne that had spilled on his expensive shoes. The server apologized profusely. Ethan looked at him with annoyance and asked if he didn't have a napkin. The server, fumbling with his tray, produced a tissue. Ethan took it, then gestured to the floor, telling him to clean up the spill. As the server bent down, Ethan smoothly swapped the glass of champagne on the man's tray with his own. He asked casually for the location of the restroom. The server, finished with his task, gave him directions. Ethan walked away with the doctored champagne, just as he heard Ryan Sterling call for a drink from that same server. When Ethan returned, Kyler complained that he had been gone for a long time. Ethan said he had run into someone and gotten his shoes wet. Kyler then mentioned that someone had just brought Julian a drink, and he seemed to be holding his liquor surprisingly well, despite Kevin's claims that he was a lightweight. In another corner of the ballroom, Ryan Sterling took a sip of his champagne and continued networking. After a few minutes, he started to feel dizzy, a strange heat spreading through his limbs. Excusing himself, he left the ballroom. Ethan, noticing his departure, told Kyler he was going to the restroom again. Kyler protested that he was making a lot of trips to the restroom that night. And why did he have to keep watching Julian? But Ethan was already gone. Kyler sighed and took a sip of his drink. A moment later, he looked over to where Julian had been standing and realized he was gone too. Outside the ballroom, Ryan stumbled toward the restroom. He collapsed in a stall just as Ethan walked in. Ethan placed a cleaning in progress sign at the entrance. He was about to call for help when he saw a message from Kyler from a minute ago. Then his phone rang. It was Joe. He reported that he was on the 5th floor as instructed and had just seen a server helping a very drunk-looking Julian out of the elevator and into a room. Ethan asked where the man was now. Joe said the server had left quickly, leaving the door slightly ajar. He didn't think anyone else was inside. In the darkened hotel room, Julian opened his eyes. He had been suspicious of the strange gift and the new server. He had only pretended to drink the champagne. When the time was right, he had feigned intoxication, and sure enough, the same server had appeared to help him to a restroom, not the suite his family had booked, but a random room on the 5th floor. It was clearly a setup. He heard footsteps outside, which paused at his door then moved on. A few minutes later, he heard more footsteps and 2 hushed voices. Then he heard a familiar one. Joe led his boss into the room. Ethan checked on Julian, who appeared to be merely drunk, a much milder reaction than Ryan Sterling's, who had passed out completely. Ethan realized the drink Julian had been given must have been the one he had swapped. He gave Joe his own room key and told him to go upstairs and explain everything to his brother. Once Joe was gone, Ethan was alone with Julian in the dark room. He moved to help him up. As he put Julian's arm over his shoulder, he heard a soft sound from his throat. Ethan paused. "Julian?" he asked. Julian just grunted in response. Ethan knew this was an act. He had helped enough genuinely drunk people to know the difference. But he played along, guiding Julian out of the room and into the one Joe had booked a few doors down. He closed the door behind them and led Julian to the bed. As he turned to leave, a hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. The grip was light, almost tentative. Ethan looked down at the man on the bed and, in the faint light from the window, saw that his eyes were open. The warm fingers on his wrist felt like an unbreakable chain. With a sudden surge of strength, Julian pulled him down. Ethan fell onto him, their faces inches apart. He could smell the faint scent of champagne on Julian's breath. He saw Julian's throat move as he swallowed. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 weeks, and the intense emotion he had felt upon seeing him in the ballroom came rushing back. After a long silence, Ethan spoke. "You're not drunk, are you?" Julian looked at him, their hands shifting from a simple grip to intertwined fingers. He raised his other hand to the back of Ethan's neck, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin. His voice was husky as he spoke. "After you called this morning, I was thinking about something." His fingers moved gently through Ethan's hair. "Mike was wrong. There was something else I should have said that day."